There are moments that carve themselves into your memory so precisely that even years later, you can recall the exact temperature of the air, the faint scent in the room, the way your skin felt against your clothes. For me, that moment was a Tuesday night in early October, the kind of night where autumn had just begun whispering its chill into the wind, and the leaves rustled like secrets outside our living room window. I had been working late, not because I had to, but because I'd been feeling something shift in our home, something small and unspoken that made being there uncomfortable in a way I couldn't yet explain. My wife, Celeste, had stopped asking when I'd be home. She used to call around 6 to check in, to ask if I wanted her to reheat dinner or wait. Lately, there was no call, no text, just silence. I remember standing in the foyer that night, one hand still on the door handle, not quite ready to walk in. The house was quiet, too quiet. Not the silence of peace, but the kind that felt layered, almost heavy. I stepped inside slowly. The air was still warm from the day, but there was a faint scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway, soft, floral, like jasmine and vanilla. It hit me unexpectedly, reminding me of the early years, when just that scent would make me rush home like a fool in love. Our daughter, Emily, had already gone to bed. I glanced at the clock, 10:47 p.m. I toed off my shoes and tiptoed across the hardwood floor, trying not to wake anyone. The living room light was off, and I assumed Celeste was asleep, too. But then I heard it, a whisper, faint and floating through the hallway like a shadow. I love you. The words were low, soft, intimate. A whisper meant only for one person. But I hadn't spoken, and I hadn't been spoken to. For a second, I froze. My heart didn't race, not yet. It simply stopped, paused, suspended, as though waiting for the rest of the scene to catch up. I followed the sound, quiet as breath, to the slightly ajar door of Celeste's home office. She never used to close that door. I could hear her voice again, even softer this time, the kind of softness that you give only to someone who owns a part of you. The way she used to talk to me. There was a subtle laugh, breathy and laced with something I hadn't heard in her voice for months. Affection. Not obligation. Not politeness. Affection. I didn't need to see her face. I didn't need to hear the other side of the conversation. I knew. But knowing and understanding are not the same thing. I stood there, inches from the door, trying to stitch some other narrative into the moment. Maybe she was rehearsing lines for a client video or reading a script. Maybe she was joking. But the thread wouldn't hold. It frayed the moment she said it again, more clearly this time. I love you. I wish I could say it out loud. Say it out loud? I turned and walked away, slowly, carefully, as if the floorboards beneath my feet might explode. I didn't confront her. I didn't say a word. I went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and stared at the shelves, pretending to look for something until I could breathe again. There was milk, eggs, half a cake from Emily's birthday 2 days ago. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I ended up sitting in the car for almost an hour that night, staring at the dashboard. I turned the engine on. Off. On again. My hands gripped the wheel like I was bracing for impact, though the crash had already happened. I just hadn't realized I was the one bleeding. I slept on the couch. When she came down the next morning, she didn't ask why. She didn't even glance at me. And that silence? It screamed louder than her whisper ever could. The days that followed blurred into a strange kind of autopilot. I smiled when I had to, played with Emily, answered work emails, pretended. But inside, I was unraveling in secret. I watched her more closely. Not because I didn't trust her. I knew the trust was gone, but because I needed to understand. She'd become so subtle in her distance. No longer cold, just absent. Emotionally vacant in a way that didn't feel angry, just done. I tried to count the last time she touched me without a purpose. The last time her fingers brushed my cheek just because they wanted to. The last time we kissed like we meant it. I couldn't remember. She still slept in our bed. Still kissed Emily goodnight. Still folded my laundry. But it was as if she had taken all the soul out of those motions, leaving behind only the shell. She'd become a ghost in our home, and I didn't know how long she'd been haunting it. I started noticing little things. A second phone charger behind the desk. A recurring meeting every Thursday afternoon, though she never talked about it. The way she'd keep her phone face down at dinner. Her sudden obsession with keeping the car clean, though she used to let it pile up with receipts and water bottles. She was hiding something. No, she was hiding someone. But I didn't say anything. I waited, watched, documented. I started keeping a journal, a strange move for someone like me, someone who dealt in logistics and numbers and clean, ordered lines. But emotions didn't fit in a spreadsheet. They leaked out in the margins, scrawled in shaky handwriting between notes like, Wednesday, 11:13 p.m., whispered, I love you again. Smiled after. Thursday, left for meeting at 1:04 p.m. Came back, 3:22. Hair damp. Changed clothes. Saturday, declined intimacy. Said she was tired. Slept facing away from me. Every entry felt like cutting a notch into the foundation of our life together. Not to build something, but to mark where it was collapsing. I knew I needed more than suspicion. I wasn't going to be that guy, the one who threw around accusations only to discover he'd been wrong. I needed proof, not to hurt her with it, but to free myself, to stop guessing and start knowing. I researched spyware. I considered tracking her location. I even thought about hiring a private investigator, though the idea of involving someone else made me feel like I was admitting defeat. Eventually, I went simpler. I bought a voice recorder, the kind that fits in a pocket or clips to the underside of a desk. Cheap, easy, disposable. I planted it in her office, beneath the corner of the desk where she always sat during her calls. It ran for days, and I listened to hours of nothing. Conference calls, shopping lists, emails dictated aloud. Nothing intimate, nothing personal, just static, digital life noise. Until Tuesday night. 7 days after I heard her whisper the words that weren't for me, I listened to her say them again. Louder this time. Braver. I don't know how much longer I can do this, she said. I feel like I'm suffocating. Every time I look at him, I feel like I'm lying. And then, the voice I wasn't supposed to hear. A man's voice, low and smooth. Just a little longer, he said. Then we can be free. And then, soft laughter. I love you, she said. I love you too, he replied. My hands trembled as I removed the headphones. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I sat in silence, surrounded by the quiet hum of my office lamp, and listened to the sound of my marriage breaking like glass. But it wasn't just heartbreak. It was rage. A cold, precise rage that didn't explode. It simmered. And that night, I decided I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to outsmart her. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to let her build her lie a little higher, just enough for it to collapse under its own weight. And I would be the one standing in the rubble, not crushed, but smiling. It's strange how betrayal sharpens your senses. After hearing her voice on the recorder, those intimate whispers not meant for me, I started seeing everything more clearly. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when texting, the half-smile that crept in when she thought no one was watching. She never smiled like that at me anymore. Not even close. I knew I was in dangerous territory, listening in on my own wife, recording her calls, keeping logs of her movements. It made me feel like some cheap spy in a late-night thriller. But this was no movie. This was the slow collapse of my life, and I couldn't look away. Celeste had always been private, but now she was secretive. And there's a difference. Privacy has boundaries. Secrets have locks. She had locked herself away, emotionally and physically, from the life we built together. I wasn't trying to unlock her anymore. I was trying to tear the whole door off the hinges. That Wednesday morning, I drove Emily to school like always. She chattered in the back seat about her art project, something with feathers and glitter and way too much glue. I nodded, smiled, answered when I could. But my thoughts were wrapped around Celeste's voice on that recorder. Every time I look at him, I feel like I'm lying. I kept hearing it, over and over again. After drop-off, I didn't go to work. I drove to a parking lot near a strip mall and waited. Around 11:30, I saw her. Celeste, dressed for a meeting, neat slacks and a tailored blouse, sunglasses even though it was overcast. She parked 2 rows over. And then he arrived. Not tall, clean-cut, average. That made it worse somehow. I'd been imagining some towering Adonis, some movie star seducer. But this man looked normal, forgettable, harmless. The kind of guy you'd sit next to at a PDA meeting and forget by morning. They didn't kiss, not here. But the familiarity between them was unmistakable. She laughed easily, her whole face softening in a way I hadn't seen in years. They walked into the cafe together, side by side, their shoulders almost touching. I waited. 15 minutes later, I slipped inside and ordered a coffee to go. My heart was pounding so loudly I worried someone might hear it. I pretended to browse the pastry shelf, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw them in a booth at the back, leaning close, hands touching beneath the table, her mouth close to his ear. I left before I could throw up. Back in the car, I shook, not with sorrow, but with clarity. It was real, not a maybe, not a hunch. Celeste was having an affair, and she wasn't ashamed of it. She looked free. That night, I acted normal. I asked about her day. She lied. Oh, work was boring. Back-to-back meetings. We had that brainstorming session on the Peterson account. You know, the one I mentioned last week. I nodded. Did you get lunch? She didn't blink. Just grabbed something from the office fridge. One of those sad little tuna sandwiches. I nearly laughed. She was good. Polished. Effortless. But I had her voice recorded. Her lies captured. And I had something else now too. His face. The next morning, I ran his license plate through a contact I had from years back. An old college buddy who owed me more than a few favors. 30 minutes later, I had his name, Derek Fennell. Married. 2 kids. Regional sales director at a health supplements company. So, he wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was doing it while lying to his own. There was something satisfying about that. Not schadenfreude exactly. But now I knew she wasn't special to him either. He wasn't whisking her away into a world of true love. He was cheating, just like she was. I made a plan. Step 1, gather more. Step 2, expose. Step 3, destroy slowly. I started small. I printed transcripts of their messages from the cloned phone I'd recovered from the air vent. I noted hotel dates, saved calendar entries, screenshots of her sending pictures in the mirror, none of which I'd ever seen before. Things I didn't even know she owned. Black lace, bright lipstick, a version of her she never showed me. On Friday night, I slipped one of the screenshots into her planner. She never said anything about it, but I knew she found it. The next morning, her routine was off, tense, quieter. I watched her for signs of a breakdown. There were none. She was too far gone. Sunday, we went to church. She held my hand, smiled at the neighbors, complimented the pastor on his sermon. Sunday afternoon, she made Emily's favorite cookies and put on jazz while she cleaned the kitchen. She was acting the part of the wife she used to be, but I saw it now for what it was. A costume. I began researching Derek's wife. Her name was Laura. She ran a photography business out of their home. Their youngest child was 4, the same age as Emily. I bookmarked her website, looked through the photos she posted of other families, smiling couples, candid moments, children in sun-drenched fields. I wondered if she had any idea her own marriage was rotting underneath those golden filters. That Monday morning, Celeste left for one of her strategy sessions. She wore perfume, new perfume, something musky, unfamiliar. I watched her walk to her car, heels clicking down the driveway. Confident, detached, like she'd already rewritten the story of our life and cast me in a supporting role. I waited 5 minutes before following. She didn't go to the office. She drove to a small and off Route 9, tucked between trees, near the old highway. I parked across the street, angled behind a hedge. 20 minutes later, he showed up. They went in together. I sat there for 2 hours, watching, thinking. They didn't even try to hide it. By the time she came home that evening, I'd already printed photos of the 2 of them entering the inn. I slipped them into the mail pile on the counter. She didn't see them that night, but she would soon. That week, I started spending more time at work. Not because I had to, but because I needed the distance. The house felt like a set now. The furniture, the hallway photos, the familiar smells. None of it felt real anymore. But Emily still did. She was the only real thing left. And I was terrified of what would happen when this all came crashing down. Would Celeste fight for custody? Would she twist the story? Say I was the unstable one. I started documenting everything. Call logs, GPS records, voicemails, calendar entries, hotel receipts. I set up a second camera, one she would never find, buried deep inside the hallway thermostat, angled to capture anyone who walked upstairs. I wasn't just preparing for a confrontation anymore. I was preparing for war. Then came the phone call. Wednesday night, 9:34 p.m. Celeste was upstairs putting Emily to bed. I had just finished reviewing the footage from the day. Nothing unusual, until the call came in. The cloned phone buzzed, and I answered from the monitoring app. Her voice came through, soft but clear. "I don't think I can wait anymore," she said. "I'm going to tell him soon." Derek's voice answered. "Don't rush. Be patient. We don't want anything messy. He's been distant lately. I feel like he knows." "He might," Derek said calmly. But what can he do? You've already made your choice. And then, the sound of lips brushing the phone, barely audible. A kiss. Then, I love you. Celeste's voice followed. I love you too. But this time, she said it twice. The second time was slower, more deliberate, more final. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not like glass, but like a lock opening. I was done collecting. It was time to act, and I knew exactly where to begin. I never realized how quickly resolve could harden inside you. It didn't bloom like courage, it calcified, cold and rigid. The night she whispered, I love you for someone else, twice. I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I didn't even pace. I planned. By morning, the frost on the lawn shimmered under pale light as I stood at the sink, watching Celeste make Emily's lunch. She hummed softly to herself, like nothing inside our home had changed. But everything had. The walls knew. The floors. Even the air felt different. Thinner. Can you pick up Emily today? She asked without turning. I might have a late meeting. I nodded. Sure. It was all so effortless for her. The lying. The living. She wasn't hiding guilt. She'd buried it. And what made it worse? She genuinely believed I had no idea. That smug comfort would be the first thing I would take from her. After she left, I retrieved the burner phone, the one she kept tucked in our ventilation system like a secret lover's keepsake. I held it in my hand for a long time, staring at the cracked corner, the fingerprints smeared across the screen. Her fingerprints. His. I had every message, every photo, every plan. But I still didn't have motive. What did she want? I began reading them again, methodically, like forensic evidence. Line by line, week by week. Most were mundane. Little snippets of daily affection. Thinking about your hands on me. Can't wait till Friday. He kissed me goodnight like nothing's wrong. It's almost funny now. But buried deep, messages that hinted at something else. A plan. An urgency. Have you heard back about the listing? He'll never see it coming. I'm almost sad for him. Almost. The listing. That word caught me. I didn't know why, but it dug under my skin. I opened our shared laptop, logged into her browser history. 2 days prior, MLS real estate, listings. Click. She was looking at properties. Luxury condos. 2 bedrooms. City view. Nothing a family would move into. Nothing with a backyard or room for Emily's playhouse. This wasn't about escape. It was about replacement. She wasn't running from me. She was preparing for a new life. I scrolled further. Emails to mortgage brokers. Subject lines like pre-approval confirmation and financial separation inquiry. Then a line that made my blood run cold. Once the separation is official, he won't be entitled to any future income. Not divorce. Separation. She was setting the groundwork. Slow, quiet, methodical. Just like me. But she underestimated me. That afternoon, I picked up Emily from school as promised. She climbed into the back seat, her pigtails bouncing, her tiny hands still sticky from lunch. Daddy, can we get hot chocolate? Sure, I said, smiling back at her in the mirror. I needed this, her innocence. It kept me grounded, made the coming storm bearable. Because this, I reminded myself, wasn't just about betrayal. It was about protection. My daughter would not be raised by liars. We sipped cocoa on a park bench, watching leaves dance in the wind. Emily chattered about classmates, a new art project, how she didn't like the smell of the cafeteria this week. I nodded, murmured agreement, all while my thoughts buzzed like static beneath the surface. Celeste would be home soon, and I had work to do before then. That night, while she showered, I slipped into her office. The room was immaculate, but her desk drawer wasn't locked. She never expected anyone to look. I found the folder within minutes, labeled Personal Finance. Inside, printouts of her 401k, a trust one didn't know she had, and a life insurance policy dated just 6 months ago. She'd named me the beneficiary. That would have been comforting if she hadn't also taken out a second policy, on herself, with an alternate beneficiary listed, Derek Fennell. What kind of wife secretly assigns her lover as a beneficiary? I snapped photos of everything. Quiet. Efficient. By the time she emerged in a robe, I was back in the bedroom, pretending to read. You're quiet tonight, she said. I looked up. Tired. She smiled faintly, climbed into bed, and turned off the lamp. Moments later, her breathing slowed. I lay awake, blinking at the ceiling. Not long now. The next morning, I called in sick. Then I drove across town to the address I'd found on Laura Fennell's photography website. Her house sat near a wooded stretch, quaint, brick-fronted, with a pale blue mailbox leaning slightly forward. I sat in my car for 10 full minutes before walking up. She answered quickly, mid-30s, short auburn hair, a DSLR slung around her shoulder. Yes. Laura Fennell? I asked. She nodded cautiously. Yes. Can I help you? I took a breath. This is going to sound strange, but I believe your husband is having an affair with my wife. Her face didn't move, but her eyes flinched. You're Grayson, I said. Grayson Merritt. She stepped back. Come in. We sat at her kitchen table while her 2 boys watched cartoons in the next room. I laid out what I knew. The photos, the messages, the hotel receipts. She said little, only nodding occasionally. I had suspicions, she whispered, but I didn't want to believe. They're planning something, I said, my voice low. Not just to leave. Something bigger. Financial. She looked up sharply. Are you in danger? I hesitated. Not yet. But they're clever, coordinated, and they're counting on our silence. She clenched her jaw. Not anymore. Before I left, we exchanged numbers. Agreed to keep each other informed. If Celeste and Derek wanted to build their new life on lies, we'd make sure the ground underneath it crumbled. That night, Celeste came home late. Hair slightly tousled. A faint perfume I didn't recognize. Sorry, she said, brushing past me. Crazy day. I said nothing. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. I watched her from the hallway. And then I said, I spoke with Laura today. She looked up slowly. Laura, Derek's wife. The glass slipped in her hand. She caught it before it fell. But her face, that was the moment I'd waited for. Not the lie, the recognition. She knew she'd been caught. And yet, she didn't panic. She smiled, small, measured, razor sharp. I see, she said. You've been recording me, haven't you? I nodded. Since the night I heard you say I love you. She didn't blink. So, what now? I walked forward. That depends, I said, on what you were planning to do to me before I found out. Her smile twitched. You don't know everything. Then tell me. She stood slowly. But before she could speak, the doorbell rang. We both turned. Outside, a silhouette waited. I moved to open the door. When I did, it wasn't Laura. It was Derek. And in his hand, he held a manila envelope. There was something unnerving about seeing him in person for the first time. This man who had quietly dismantled my marriage one whispered phone call at a time. Derek stood in our doorway like he had every right to be there, his polished shoes planted on the welcome mat Celeste had picked out during a Black Friday sale 2 years ago. The mat read, Home is us. I nearly laughed at the irony. He didn't speak. Not right away. He just stared at me, his expression unreadable. In his right hand, the manila envelope remained perfectly still, almost delicate, as if what it held was fragile. Dangerous. Behind me, Celeste moved slowly toward the entryway. Her bare feet whispered across the hardwood. She didn't speak either. I think, Derek finally said, his voice calm, we should talk. He didn't look at her. Only me. Without waiting for a response, he stepped inside. The audacity didn't surprise me. He was the kind of man who thought consequences were for other people. I closed the door behind him and motioned toward the kitchen. The 3 of us stood around the island like contestants on a game show none of us wanted to win. Derek set the envelope down. I assume you've been listening to our conversations, he said, glancing sideways at Celeste, who folded her arms across her chest. So you know things have progressed. Don't flatter yourself, I said, my voice low. I'm not here to hear your love story. Then hear this instead, he replied, tapping the envelope. We were going to wait. Do this carefully, quietly. But since you've decided to get involved, here it is, everything you'd eventually find out anyway. I stared at the envelope. Celeste said nothing, but she was watching me. Closely. I opened it. Inside, printed copies of text threads between them, some I'd already seen, others more recent. But what made my pulse quicken was a second stack. Bank statements. Not ours. Mine. My private accounts. My savings. My 401k. My name, my balances, marked and highlighted with handwritten notes. I flipped through them, confused. What is this? Celeste spoke at last. It's what you were never supposed to find out. Her voice was eerily steady. Too steady. You remember last year, when your company filed for that expansion project? I nodded slowly. The Reading bid. You had to transfer funds to a separate holding account, right? My stomach sank. Celeste, I helped you set up the paperwork, she continued, now walking slowly around the island. Remember? You were so busy. I signed the documents you left on the counter. My breath caught. You didn't read them, she said simply. Not really. You assumed I just notarized them. Derek interjected. She didn't steal from you. Not technically. She made herself a co-signer. My mouth went dry. And 2 weeks later, she added, we transferred just under $320,000 into a high-yield account under my maiden name. The room swayed slightly. You've been siphoning from my business account. She didn't flinch. From a separate, legally isolated investment account attached to the expansion. It was under both our names, your mistake. I stepped back. Derek reached into his coat and pulled out a small stack of new papers. This is a formal separation of assets, he said. We're offering this in lieu of legal proceedings. Sign this, and the money stays where it is. No lawsuits, no press, no family fallout. I looked down at the papers. Notarized, dated, already signed by her. And if I don't? Derek smiled faintly. Then we drag this into court, tie it up for years, burn through your savings and reputation. We already have documents prepared to suggest you've been hiding income. Questionable tax filings. Emotional instability. Lies, I muttered. He shrugged. Maybe, but lies cost money to disprove. Celeste watched me, her expression unreadable. Almost mournful. Almost. You knew I'd find out, I said quietly. She nodded. Eventually. But I hoped, maybe by then, you'd be too tired to fight. She said it without venom. Just exhaustion. Like I was a project she'd outgrown. I folded the separation papers. Slid them back across the counter. No. Derek's brows lifted slightly. No? You think you can outmaneuver me, I said, calm settling over me like fog. But you don't understand what you've done. I looked at her. You could have just left, Celeste. You didn't need to steal. I didn't steal, she whispered. I reclaimed. You were never really here. That may be, I said. But I'm here now. I turned to Derek. By the way, Laura says hello. That cracked his composure. Just slightly. A blink. A stiffening of the jaw. She knows. She knows everything. I stepped around him, grabbed my coat from the hook near the door. You've underestimated the wrong man, I said, opening the door. I'm not signing anything. And I'm not leaving my daughter in the care of thieves. Derek's voice turned sharp. You're making a mistake. No, I replied, stepping into the cold air. You did. And then I left. The next 3 days moved like falling dominoes. I met Laura again. This time not to trade evidence, but to plan. She'd been gathering her own file. Messages, voicemails, photos. She'd even followed Derek once, capturing him and Celeste entering a not-so-modest Airbnb outside of town. The timestamp placed it during what was supposed to be school volunteer hours. Between the two of us, we built a timeline. A record. Proof not just of infidelity, but of fraud, hidden assets, and possible business interference. Then, the email. To Celeste. And to Derek. BCC'd to my attorney. Hers too. With attachments. Dates. Locations. Screenshots. Financial statements. Side-by-side comparisons of discrepancies in the transfer of funds. Laura's voice recordings. My surveillance footage. No threats. No accusations. Just facts. The message was short. Transparency makes litigation unnecessary. I suggest you both reconsider your course of action. Gee. There was no response for 12 hours. Then came the panic. At 2:14 a.m., Celeste called. I didn't answer. At 2:18, a text. Can we talk? No reply. At 4:02, another. You don't understand what you've started? Please. Still silence. By morning, Laura had received 2 voicemails from Derek. He sounded tired. Unraveled. One began with anger, the next with pleading. At 8:17 a.m., Celeste showed up at my office. Michelle intercepted her before she could get past reception. She's asking to see you, she said through the intercom. Tell her I'm in meetings all day, I replied. A pause. She's crying. Not my concern. I hung up. By noon, Celeste was gone. Michelle slipped a note into my hand from the front desk. Written in blue ink, slightly smeared. Please, don't do this to us. The word "us" caught me off guard. As if it still meant anything. I folded the note. Tossed it in the trash. That evening, I received an envelope of my own. No return address. Postmarked locally. Inside, one item. A printed photo. Celeste and Emily. Taken through a window, unknowing. Emily smiling, mid-laugh. Her mother looking down at her, unreadable. And behind them, Derek. Watching. Hands in pockets. Too close. Beneath the photo, typed in block font. You think this is over. It's not. I stared at the photo for a long time. There was no return address. No smudged handwriting. Just a printed image and a line of text like a warning carved into a tombstone. You think this is over. It's not. The photo itself was grainy but unmistakable. Celeste and Emily sitting in the sunroom. The blinds were half open, revealing just enough for a voyeur's lens. Derek was in the background, framed by the hallway. Not touching either of them. Not even close, but watching. Watching like he belonged there. The protective instinct inside me didn't spark, it detonated. It was never about jealousy. Not really. It was about invasion. About how a stranger had slipped into my home, into my daughter's orbit, into my wife's skin, wearing my life like a suit that never fit him. And now he wanted to remind me that he was still here. I pulled out my phone and dialed the only person I knew would understand the next move. Laura answered on the second ring. I saw it too, she said. No greeting. Just confirmation. He's unraveling. I'm not going to let him get near Emily again. I already called my lawyer. We're filing today. You think he sent the photo? I know him. It's his way of marking territory. I nodded, then remembered she couldn't see me. He wants us scared. Well, she said, voice low and deliberate. Then let's be terrifying. The next 72 hours were a cascade of filings, documentation, digital backups, and unignorable noise. Between my attorney and Laura's, we escalated everything. Petitions for sole custody, formal fraud allegations, forensic audits, even a restraining order request based on the photograph's implicit threat. I handed over every document I'd compiled. Voice recordings, GPS logs, camera footage, texts, emails, even screenshots from cloud storage I'd cloned off the burner phone Celeste thought was cleverly hidden. It was all admissible, all damaging. When Celeste's lawyer called mine, panic in her tone, we already had a plan in place. I suggest your client keeps a very low profile, my attorney said coolly. She may be looking at criminal exposure. The silence on the other end of the line was satisfying. They weren't in control anymore. We were. And Derek? His response was even better. He ran. It was Friday morning when we got word. Derek had taken an emergency leave from his company, cleared out his home office, booked a one-way ticket to Costa Rica under a Shell LLC name, traced back through an IP address Laura had flagged 3 weeks prior during her own quiet investigation. But he never made it to the gate. He was intercepted at JFK Airport, held for questioning regarding financial misconduct involving his employer, something completely unrelated to Celeste or me, but deeply telling. The man who had wrecked our lives didn't just lie in love. He lied everywhere. And finally, it caught up to him. The last I heard, he was being held pending federal charges. Laura and I didn't celebrate. Not exactly. But we did meet for coffee, somewhere public, somewhere quiet. We sat for an hour without much small talk. It wasn't necessary. We'd both stared into the same fire and come out the other side. When we stood to leave, she said something I won't forget. You didn't deserve what they did to you. I nodded. Neither did you. Her eyes softened. You going to be okay? Eventually, I said. Are you? She paused, then looked at me. Not sad, not angry. Just awake. I already am. Celeste left the house 2 days later. There was no fight. No last plea. No confessional epiphany. Just a note on the kitchen table, written in that same flawless, looping script that used to sign anniversary cards. You win. I don't have the energy to keep fighting something I already lost. I read it twice. Then I folded it and tossed it in the trash. Winning was never the goal. But I wasn't about to pretend it didn't feel like one. I changed the locks. I contacted the school. I filed for sole legal and physical custody, citing both financial misconduct and emotional instability. Her lawyer didn't contest. The judge signed off 3 weeks later. Celeste was granted supervised visitation once per month, conditional upon completion of a psychological evaluation and a certified parenting course. I told Emily what I could in terms she could grasp. Mommy's going to live somewhere else for a while, I said gently. Is it my fault? She whispered. No, sweetheart. No. Never. Did she stop loving me? No. But sometimes grown-ups make choices that aren't good for anyone. And now it's my job to make sure you stay safe and happy. She nodded slowly. Then she reached out and hugged me. Okay, Daddy, she said into my shirt. I love you. And there it was, the words I hadn't heard in weeks. Not from the wrong voice, but from the only one that still mattered. I haven't seen Celeste since the court ruling. She emails occasionally, cordial, dry messages that read like job applications. No warmth. No venom either. Just absence. Once, in late spring, I saw her from across the street during a school recital. She stood near the back, alone, wearing sunglasses even though it was nearly dark. She didn't wave. Neither did I. Maybe she thought I hated her. I don't. But I can't forgive her. Not because she cheated. Not because she lied. But because she chose him, a man so lacking in character. He thought winning meant erasing everyone else. She didn't just betray me. She endangered the life we built. The child we created. The foundation of us. And that's not something you come back from. Not even with time. It's been 10 months now. Emily's taller. Her drawings are more detailed. She giggles in her sleep sometimes, and every time I hear it, I remember what I'm fighting for. We moved to a smaller house, cozy, quiet, with a porch where I drink coffee every morning and listen to the wind move through the trees. I changed jobs, too. Left the company I helped build and started consulting remotely. Less money, more peace. Laura and I still talk occasionally. She sends pictures of her kids. Sometimes I send one of Emily at the lake or building Lego castles on the living room floor. We never mention Derek. There's no need. The truth is, we didn't just survive betrayal. We outlived it. The kind of revenge that matters most isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's waking up every day and realizing you're still whole, still strong, still standing. It's hearing the voice of your child say, "Good morning, Daddy," and knowing it's the right voice this time. The one that never lied. The one that never left. And the only one I'll ever need.